All right. Hello, everyone. Hello. I see people are joining, so welcome. We're going to wait maybe a minute for folks to join, and then we will go ahead and get started. Well, very cool. I see more folks joining. So again, welcome. We're just waiting a few more seconds for more people to join and then connect their audio, and then we'll go ahead and get started here. All right. I think it's good time to get started. It's 3 after. So welcome everyone. My name is Max Katz and welcome to this online meetup. Discover 10 helpful and awesome, I hope, for you Okta workflows tips. Before we get started, if you can maybe just put a message in the chat just to make sure you can hear me okay, that would be great. It says chat is disabled. Did I disable the chat? Or maybe in the Q&A. I don't know if the chat seems to be disabled for some reason here. Oh, maybe I did something. Okay. All right. I'm sorry. Maybe I turned off chat by mistake. Anyhow, but I see in the Q&A, so this is good. Thank you. I just want to make sure that you can hear me. All right. So what I usually ask is to share where people are coming from. But I think with the chat disabled, it might not be as simple. But if you still want to post something in the Q&A, please do. Just where you're coming from, what city, location, country, whatever you would like to share. And again, I apologize for the chat being disabled. I don't know if I can enable it quickly here. Let me just quickly check. Yeah, I don't see an option to enable it. All right, well, anyhow. Cool, and I'm joining from the San Francisco Bay Area, and my name is Max Katz. I lead a community for Okta workflows, and again, the plan is today is to show you 10 helpful tips. And I think we'll probably have more time, so we can actually maybe go even over the 10 tips. All right, so this is the plan. Hello and welcome. That's what I'm doing now. This also online meetup is being recorded, and then I'm going to publish the replay onto our YouTube channel. So we have a workflows community playlist. Then, of course, we'll go into the tips. And then if you have any questions at the end. Now, the tips are right here. I just created a list here. I'm not going to read it because we're just going to jump right away into using these tips. Now, one more thing I also going to mention, you're going to get an email tomorrow with some resources from this event, including the link to the replay. So that's going to happen tomorrow. All right. Let me see here. Let me see if there's anything in the Q&A, considering, again, I disabled the chat for some reason. All right, I don't see anything. Very cool. All right, then let's get started. Let me go back here and let me open the first flow here. Okay, so we'll start with the first one. Again, we're not going to build a flow in this online meetup. We did some previous events that you can check out where I built, a complete flow, for example. This is, we're just really going to focus on kind of little tips, really helpful tips, I believe, that will help you become a better automation builder. Okay, so the first one is using a pin. But let me show you how it helps. So this is just a flow. This is an actual kind of a working flow that the flow checks when was the last time a user signed in into an organization. Now, if I scroll to the side here, we can see that the very last card, create row, so it creates a row in the table, and then it has a number of inputs here. It has ID, login, last login is missing, but it's fine. Now, and you can see if I click on the field, right, it keeps the connections on. They're all coming from this first card, all right? So if let me remove this, and remove this. So if I wanted to make a connection from the very first card to this, one option is to do something like this, right? Scroll all the way, and this is still not a very sort of long flow. I mean, some flows are even sort of bigger. I can take this ID here, and I can just kind of drag and drop it, and it's kind of not very convenient, especially if the flow is long, because I can do this. So that's one way to do it, and I'm sure you know how to do that. But there's actually a simpler way, and that's the first tip, and there's a little pin here. Then you can click the pin, and then this card freezes them in sort of in place. And then what you can do, you can scroll the flow, and then this makes it so much more convenient to make the connection. So now we got the ID here. Now we got, this is the username, and then we got the last login, actually right here, right? So using this pin really helps you connect data from the first card onto any card in your flow. All right, so now once you made the connection, you can unpin it, and of course it just kind of it goes back. All right, so this is the first tip, is using this handy pin. I use it a lot. It's just much, I think, easier than to just kind of scroll through the entire flow, and then you can release the mouse by mistake, and then you have to do it all over again. So that's how it works. Now, a similar sort of tip, and this is tip number 2. So this is, again, using the pin works only in the first card, okay? But it's possible that you might want to connect, let's say, from, oh, sorry, I don't want to navigate from the flow. Let's say you want to take this now field from the date card, right? And so you're sort of running into a similar problem, right? And there is no way to pin this card. So again, you can take this, you can kind of drag and drop it. This is still a pretty short distance I had to move, but just imagine I had to kind of scroll for longer. So another way you can do this, and this is super handy. I mean, I use this all the time. So anywhere you have the field you're looking for, right? So you don't need to go all the way back to the original or the source card. You can take it anywhere that field is already present and just connect it like this. And then the connection, if you notice it, look at this connection, it goes all the way automatically to the original one, right? So this is really, really super handy. So let me show you this again. So again, I want to connect this now, the current time. This is where it's coming from. And I don't want to sort of, again, scroll all the way here. So anywhere I have this field connected to a different card that's closer, I can just take, no, that's not what I want to do. I want to do this. All right, and this is what happens. All right. Again, I use this all the time. It's pretty convenient. Then you don't have to go back and just sort of, again, find the original card and scroll. So this is the second tip. I guess the name could be, drag and drop a field from other card where the field is connected. You know, I think if you hear it for the first time, it's like, it's not going to make any sense, I think, what I just said. But if you see that in action, it actually makes a lot of sense. And I think a very convenient tip. Okay, so tip number 3 is renaming outputs. Okay, so, you know, every card is going to have an input usually, and then output. So, you know, this card has all these outputs. You know, this card has all these inputs. And, you know, again, every card is going to have a, you know, again, inputs and outputs. Now, if you look at this one, you know, this one rounds the number. So you give it a number and it rounds it to, here we can show you how it works. So if I enter something like 84.5, actually make it 6, and then I test, it rounds the number like this, all right? And so the default output, it says rounded, okay? And you know, if, for example, let me give you, if you use a compose, this is going to be by default outputs from the compose card. So every card is going to have a default name. Now, you know, it might work for you, but I think it's a good idea to rename these outputs in some situations. I think to give more context, so that when you revisit the flow later, it's a little bit easier to understand what it does. So this is the third tip, is that you can rename the outputs. And the way to do that is you can first click the little arrow next to the type and then customize. And you can do it this way. And you can, for example, call this, so days since last login, for example. And you can see that this changes here. And what's really nice is that this also changes automatically. So you don't need to go and rename all the other, you know, change the name in all the other places. Okay. Now, another way to do this. So again, I click this little icon here next to the type, there's a little arrow pointing down, and I click customize. Now, another way to do it is you can click here, little gear for the card, click edit card, and then through the pencil. I mean, a few more steps, but this is another way to do it. So days since last, again, login and save, same thing. Okay. So again, I think renaming and giving these outputs more meaningful name, I think it's a good idea. So there's, again, more context, and just, you know, the flow now has more information on what exactly is happening. So that's tip number 3. Now, tip number 4 is, let me save this here, and is this little question mark. So again, I use this all the time, and you might already know about this, but this opens the help for this particular card. And then it provides a description, and then it provides what inputs and what they mean, and then outputs. And then for some cards, it will provide an example. So I think this is very, very handy. Again, I use this all the time. You know, it's sometimes you just want to make sure you understand how a particular card works, and you can always just click here and kind of read and see what it does. All right, so that's the 4th tip, is using the help for each card. All right, so we've covered 4 tips, and I know some of them are you're probably aware of these, but if not, I mean, hopefully they're kind of cool and helpful. And, you know, some of them, again, are sort of really short, but I think it's still a good idea to know that these capabilities are available. All right, let me save this, and oh, okay, of course. All right, are we back? Let's see here. All right, we are. Okay, let's go to our second. All right, so the second one is choosing which fields to show in the card. Again, some of you might already know this, but I think it's a pretty, it's a good thing that you should sort of know. So looking at this card, this is the Okta Read User card. And so it has one input, just the user ID or login. And then you can see it has a lot of properties, all right? Let me just move this, the zoom bar here. But when you look at this, when you accept the default values, this is what's going to show. But sometimes you want to maybe hide some of these properties, or maybe you want to see what else is available. Then what you do is you again click this gear and you select choose fields. And then it's going to show you all the enabled fields, enabled which are shown. And then you can see all the other fields as well. So sometimes if you're looking for like maybe again a feature or capability, it's possible that just that field, that property is not showing in the card. And then if you want, you can maybe uncheck this and then check these and then click save. And then this gets updated. So that's how you choose the outputs. Now, it works in a similar way for inputs as well. So this is another card. This is search rows for a table. And then it just depends on the card. But as you can see, the inputs, these are all the outputs, and then the inputs. So there is the filter expression, sort by column. There's one that's always there by default. But let's say we don't really care about the column. We don't care about the limit, the offset. All we want is the where expression. We click save. As you can see, those inputs are now hidden, and only the where expression is shown. Okay, so again, this is available for all the cards, and of course, the number of the input fields and output fields will be very different for each card, and what you can show and what you can hide. But I think, again, as I just shared, sometimes you're looking for some capability for a field and you don't see it. So it's very much possible that you just need to sort of enable it and show it. And then you get that property, that field. All right. So that's tip number 5. All right. Let's save this. Let's go. All right. The next two, we've got really, these are neat ones. So we got HTML. So the Compose card is a very widely used card for text. But in case you were not aware, you can also write HTML. As you can see, I have a simple email here. Well, I have a simple HTML message first that is then I send an email using Gmail. Again, this output here, so if you want to make it a little bit more, give it a little more context, right? So we can go to customize and we can say email message and click save. All right. Now, one thing with Gmail, you do need to enable this an option. So by default, it will send it as text. So you need to email it, set it in body as HTML and click save. I think with Office 365, there's a property, there's like an input property that you can just check. So it's not in options, okay? And if you want to see how it looks, we can quickly send a test. And then let's see here, I've got this test email application. All right. Oh, I need to change the email. Here we go. And this is the email. And now you can see here, this is how it looks. So we got a bold, we got a list, and we got italics. All right. So that's tip number 6 for HTML email. On the same flow here, this is a note card. And you can see my text is formatted. So you can use markdown, which is really neat. How to use markup? Well, if you put the cursor inside, it switches to kind of the edit mode. And you can see that I have this is a bold word. I've got a list. I've got a line separator here, and I've got italics. So if you use these to to comment more than maybe just a sentence, but you want to provide more information, and you want to be able to format it a little bit, you can use markdown in these cards. So this is a pretty neat capability as well, that again, when you look at the card for the first time, when you create, you might not be aware that this is possible. All right, so this was tip number 6. And tip number 7, let me save and go to tip number 8. All right, so this is a flow. This is an actual working flow that sends a message, SMS message via Twilio. And so this is doing some setup here. One thing that's also here is I'm using the API connector to make a post to Twilio. As you can see, it has headers, right? So if you make a call to a third-party API, you know, the headers will be different for each API. So in this case, I have it here, kind of a, I guess, hard-coded as a JSON string. Now, what is very handy is, you know, once you're working with third-party APIs, or just in general, you need to create a JSON object, is to use a card called, actually, let's go here, object, and then construct. And you can create a JSON object here. And so let me show you how it looks. So you give the field or a name, and this will be accept. And now we're going to take this application JSON. All right. And then the second is content type. Just copy it. And all right. And then we can test, just see how it looks. And if I click test, we get a JSON object. Okay. And of course, you can have as many sort of pairs, you know, value pairs as you need. All right. So that's tip number 8. If you ever need to create a JSON object, this is a very handy way of doing it. Again, and I started using this a lot. Okay. Now, so let's actually use this here. And this brings us to tip number 9, is that you can drag and drop cards. All right. Again, perhaps you're not aware of this, but this is also sometimes handy where you can just kind of rearrange cards. So you don't need to delete and then add them, okay? And then once we have this output, we can perhaps, if we want, we can rename this to say Twilio headers and just create a connection like this. All right, let's save and let's give this a quick run. We can put a new emoji here. Let's put this and click run. All right, and then I've got, let's see, and you can see I went to Google Voice, and then you see this is the message that was just received. All right, cool. And so what I did with this test, this actually brings us to tip number 10. So tip number 9 was that you can drag and drop cards. And tip number 10 is also a pretty cool one, is that you can create which are called sort of repeatable or ad hoc flows that you can run when needed. So this is a flow that you can just run sort of manually or just ad hoc when you need it, right? It has all the inputs that you need. And then you can just open this flow and you can just click test, you know, enter the data that you want, just, you know, for that particular run, and then just click run. So you can create these repeatable flows. If you need to accomplish something, right, it can be as simple as sending an SMS message or an email, or it can be, of course, a lot more sort of sophisticated or complicated flow. You can create these ad hoc flows where you go, you enter the input for that particular run, and also keep in mind that you can save the inputs. So I have it here, so you don't need to, if if it's the same input or very similar input, or at least most fields, I should say, stay the same. and then click run. And so that's another neat thing that you should kind of well, be aware of, that you can do this. Again, it can be repeatable flow or ad hoc flow, whatever the name you like. So, well, so these were the 10 tips. Again, I hope some of these were new to you. I'm sure that some of you already knew these little tips, but again, I hope you still learned something new. Now, I know we have a little bit more time. We started like 3 or 4 minutes after the hour, so I'm going to quickly run through just 5 more tips, and then we'll be done. All right. So let me exit, and let me go here. So here, when you add an app action or a function, what I also use a lot, and again, I'm sure you're already using this, but you can search. You can search for the action you're looking for. So for example, if I want to do something with tables, so I can use search, and then search rows is right here. So this is pretty handy. I use this, I think, almost all the time. Okay. And the same thing is for the app action. So you can search for a connector or an application. So Okta. And then when you go inside Okta, there is one thing that's kind of you have to delete what you typed. But then, right, so like Okta has a lot of actions. So this is very handy. So you can do, list users with filter, for example. And then you find the card. So again, I use the search. If you know what card you need to add, I think it's a little bit quicker than navigating the folders. All right, so that's tip number 11. Tip number 12 is, I started also using this, is testing this sort of card. What I mean by that is that, so let's say you added this card, list users with filter, and then you want to do streaming, right? So you want to stream all the users into a helper flow, and we don't care about the inputs. We click save. Now, notice here that it's not going to let you save until you enter set a helper flow. Now, in case you don't have a helper flow yet, right? So now it's like, what do? You can't really save it because you're going to get an error, right? So what I usually do in these situations where I want to try this and then going to build my helper flow, I go back to options, and then I actually choose this option, first 200 matches. Click save. So now, let me save. Oh, sorry, that's not what I wanted to. Here we go. I have to move the zoom bar. So now it switches to a list instead of streaming. And what this allows me to do, it allows me to test, right? Let me set the status to maybe active. So now it allows me to test the card. Now, of course, if you have more than 200, it's not going to show you. But I think as you're building, this is fine, just to make sure you're getting some data back. And this allows you to go and build the helper flow, right? And so once you build the helper flow, you go back here and then switch to streaming and then set the helper flow for streaming. Anyhow, just a little tip that perhaps you can also use. All right. The next one I want to show you is, so you've got these connectors or connections, I should say, right? You've got a list of connections here. And sometimes you're wondering, so, well, I have the Okta connection here. And it's like, in which flow is it being used? So how do you check that? Well, so there's a very handy capability feature here. So if you click on this icon, which looks like a navigator or a compass, if you click usage, it's actually going to open and show you all the flows that this connection is being used. All right, which is pretty handy. As you can see, like the Okta connector is, of course, being used in many, many flows. All right, so this is how you check like connector usage and in which flows it is being used. So again, you go to the connections page and then click this little icon in the middle. It says usage. All right, that's tip number 13. Quickly, 2 more. Now, any flow here, any flow, or also a folder can be exported. So you can export it here, one flow. You can also go to a folder and you can export the entire folder. Now, what's really neat is that so you might be wondering, I export the folder, can I send it to someone? So the answer is yes. Your connection information. So if I go here again, so this connection information will not be part of the export, right? So they'll need the person you're sharing with, if they import the flow, right? They'll need to select the connection. Now, one thing just to be aware of, if you have an Okta, so if you had an Okta connection, connector, and then that person, when they import the flow, their connection might automatically be picked up, okay? But it's going to be their connection, not yours. So again, your private information is safe, so it's completely safe to actually export the flow and then share it with someone else. Now, do keep in mind that if you've saved in like a private or a sensitive, key or API key in the card itself, then that information will be, of course, exposed. But the actual connection here will not. All right. And the last one is using emojis. Something I've been doing a lot, as you can probably see. I use emojis, and you can see here. So yeah, I mean, as you're naming your folders or your flows, you can add an emoji. Sometimes, like if I want to take, let's say this one, and I want to make it sort of kind of give it a star, or flag it, like you can usually do in an email. So I just put something like a flag this flow. Maybe this is the working version, for example, right? And then there's a little star. And then it's just a little bit easier to see, like when you see, oh, this is the flow that I guess the source or the original or the working one. So that's how I use emojis. So something you can try as well. Well, very cool. So that's it. So we did 10 tips, and then we quickly did 5 more. And let me know if there are any questions. Again, I apologize. If you joined a little bit later, I disabled the chat for some reason. I'm not sure why or how I did that. But if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A, and then I will answer them. Other than that, so these are the tips. The last slide that I have are some resources. So if you go to this page, it will get you to this actual page with all the resources, tutorials, documentation, office hours, videos, how-to guides, tips, everything. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me via email. All right. So that's it. If you have any tips, let me know. Actually, I publish a weekly tip blog post. So if you have, 2 or 3 tips, I would love to get those, and then we can publish. And then, of course, they'll be published on your behalf. We'll say they're coming from you. So I'm always looking for that kind of content. So again, if you have any cool tips, send them and we can publish. If you have any interesting ideas for a topic for our next online meetup, also let me know via email, or I guess email is the best way. It's like, hey, let's cover this. I would love to hear your feedback. All right. Well, I'm going to wait for a few more seconds. I don't see any more questions. So yes, so recording will be available today. A link will be sent tomorrow, and you can see my email. So don't hesitate to reach out. I hope this was helpful. Thank you again for coming, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.